couldn't simply just lean on the trigger of an MG42 and cook off rounds like that. You'd have to pause a little bit, otherwise you'd completely overheat the gun. I'm John McManus. I'm a professor of military history at Missouri University of Science and Technology. I've written 15 books, mostly about World War II, including 2 about D-Day and especially Omaha Beach. Today we'll be looking at war scenes from Saving Private Ryan, and we'll judge how real they are. I don't know how they did it, but the atmospheric feel for what you're seeing here is very similar to the morning of D-Day. You get a sense of the tides and the surf being pretty rough as they come ashore. That's 100% accurate. Of course, you just had a major storm system come through a couple of days before, and even the day before. Eisenhower postponed the invasion for 24 hours. The initial D-Day was supposed to be June 5th. But he decided, the weather's so bad, we just simply have to hold off on this thing.
Move fast and clear those murder holes!
So you see him standing on the Higgins boats, okay? In the real invasion, the captain probably would have been at the front of the boat, ready to lead when they got off. Now, there's solid reasons, of course, in a movie why you can't do that, why he's got to be kind of in the middle of his guys. You'll notice, too, they have mixed along with them guys with a blue-gray patch. Those are guys from the 29th Infantry Division, which is the sort of main formation that comes ashore at that part of the beach. Very dramatic film, of course. Machine Gun just has this Higgins boat completely zeroed in. You couldn't simply just lean on the trigger of an MG42 and cook off rounds like that. You'd have to pause a little bit, otherwise you'd completely overheat the gun. And it's true that there's a lot of heavy machine gun fire, especially at this initial wave at Omaha Beach, but really the bigger threat to a lot of the people coming off those Higgins boats was mortar fire, artillery fire, small, like 50-millimeter gunfire, but you are under that kind of cone of fire, and they really get that part of it right. Though I'm not a ballistics expert, it's actually almost physically impossible for bullets to have killed someone like that under the water. But, like so many things with the movie, the realism is incredible on some levels because so many guys did go over the side. They're in the water, they're disoriented, and of course, there's the danger of drowning as well. The sheeting that covers the guy's rifle, that's dead on accurate. A number of people who come ashore at Omaha Beach did have plastic coating for the rifle. You'll notice one inaccuracy, though. If you're looking at the log obstacle, it's pointed in the wrong direction. It should be pointed to shoreward, and the reason for that was because the angle was such that at higher tide it could catch a landing craft and blow the front off a landing craft. But it's just one minor error in this part. This is just so good because the biggest danger to your life if you're one of these guys coming ashore at H-hour is the artillery, and these are clearly artillery rounds. And the way they show the explosions, the way people are kind of flipped about, dead on accurate to what happens, unfortunately, to a lot of people. This is one of my favorite parts of the entire movie because it shows something that happened quite a bit at Omaha Beach and in a combat in general, and it's called acoustic trauma. When you have these kind of explosions close to you, you are sort of concussed, but your hearing is, of course, severely damaged. So in this case, Tom Hanks's character, Captain Miller, is in the middle of that acoustic trauma. When you see all this carnage that's going on, it may seem a little over the top Hollywood, but I will tell you, those are taken directly from veterans' accounts. So here, you're seeing what would have appeared to you at Omaha Beach to be one of the safest points. We've just, gotten past the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and so we've gotten a sense of how significant this was. The invasion that happens in France is going to open up a second front, as the Allies called it at the time. And there's really only 2 major reasons that they consider invading in any seriousness: Calais, which is farther to the east, and also Normandy. Normandy is a solid second choice because it's not as heavily defended as Calais, and it offers some ports, it offers suitable landing beaches. It is, looking back on it, you know, certainly one of the seminal events in modern history because it's the beginning of the end of Nazi Germany. I'd give it a 9. I mean, I'd solid 9. I mean, certainly I would have preferred the log obstacles be pointed in the right direction. There are things to parse with here and there. But you know what? It's Omaha Beach, and I think overall it's really well done.
No armor has made it ashore. We got no DD tanks on the beach. Dog 1 is not open.
Here we have a little bit of mythology. The idea that no armor had made it ashore at Omaha Beach. Actually, a lot of armor made it ashore at Omaha Beach. The reason I think that this line is in there is because you refer to DD tanks. Those are duplex drive, like amphibious tanks that swam their way in, or they were designed to do that. Yes, it's true that 27 out of 32 of those sank, but in the opposite end of Omaha Beach from where they are, in the side of the beach where they are, all the DD tanks got in because they were brought in by landing craft.
I got it! We stopped the bleeding! We stopped the bleeding!
Yeah, I really like that clip because it shows just how difficult the job of the medics was that day. And you notice, too, how far forward they are. Omaha Beach is one of those rare battlefields where medics are having to move wounded toward the enemy instead of away for the obvious reason that they can't move into the sea. And so they are definitely vulnerable. So the way they portray that here is dead on.
Bangalore's up the line!
Bangalore torpedoes were a major way that the Americans got off the beach, and that's basically just like explosive-laden tubes you see that you had to assemble together. And why was that? Because you might need a very long tube of explosives to get over that kind of barbed wire or through a minefield to create a pass somehow. Omaha Beach, that is really common, especially for some of these initial waves, to use Bangalore torpedoes to blow gaps in the barbed wire. Although, when you see in this last part of the clip, the way the machine gun nest is portrayed is not necessarily all that accurate. It's certainly just right out there, completely vulnerable, and the Germans probably wouldn't have had that many sandbags at a position like that. Yeah, I would say I'll give it an 8 out of 10. And the only reason I knock it down a peg is because of the idea of no armor making it ashore. For us Omaha Beach nerds, it's a little bit of a a nettling thing, the idea that there's no armor on Omaha Beach on D-Day. There are some issues with this clip. The Vierville exit, you wouldn't have gone straight up that ravine. I mean, that just like they portray, that would have been an absolute, death knell. They actually kind of flank around from behind. It's a pretty bad situation if your last option is to send your sniper out there in an impact crater somewhere. What they would have done, what they did do, is to bring in heavier firepower. Some of those tanks, maybe that are on the beach by now. There are also some anti-aircraft pieces that they can use to shoot at them.
You're not that far from me, oh Lord.
I mean, obviously, this is a really high-speed sniper that Barry Pepper is portraying in Private Jackson. Special scope atop a Springfield rifle, which would have been, the major sniper rifle you would have used in World War II. But one of the things that's always stood out to me is you notice the bruising on his thumb. Now, that was more typical of the kind of problem that you'd have in firing a different rifle called the M1 Garand, which was the main rifle in World War II for Americans. That the bolt could slam forward if you didn't load it properly, and it was called M1 thumb. And it almost looks like Private Jackson has M1 thumb, which has always made me curious. Like, well, wait a minute, he doesn't have an M1 Garand, and he's an incredibly expert rifleman. How would that have happened to him? Now, this is not my favorite scene in the movie. Quite far down the list. You have here what is often called the sort of classic example of the dumb German. Someone has just thrown a grenade into your bunker, and you're just going to sort of beetle out of the bunker without looking to see who's out there. There's also, not strictly speaking, any real evidence that we ever had a flamethrower team clear out a pillbox or bunker with their weapon at Omaha Beach on D-Day. This is really well portrayed in terms of the terrain. There were trenches like this. The Americans were trying to clear them out. This last part here, with the Americans sort of catching them like fish in a barrel, those who fought around the Vierville Draw would have loved to have had a scenario like that on D-Day, but to my knowledge, there just wasn't a lot of that where the Germans got caught that badly.
I'm sorry, I can't understand what you're saying!
One of the things I really like about this clip, too, is it portrays the non-Germans who are in German uniform at Omaha Beach. In this case, I think these guys were Czech, and they're trying to explain that to the Americans, saying, don't shoot. And ironically, that's what gets them shot. Now, if we're thinking about like 100% accuracy, it's far more likely that the Americans would have encountered non-Germans who came from Russia, Ukraine, or Poland. Those were the three primary ethnic groups that you would have had in uniform for the Germans at Omaha Beach on D-Day. I'd give it an 8. You know, as I mentioned, I'm not that wild about how they're, you know, tossing the grenade and the sort of dumb German that comes out of the bunker and all that business, and the use of a flamethrower when that probably did not happen. I would give, you know, overall, to all these Omaha Beach scenes, I'd give it a 9 out of 10. It's so well done. It's so well researched. It's so true to many eyewitness accounts, many veterans' accounts.
You want to explain the math of this to me? I mean, where's the sense of risking the lives of the 8 of us to save one guy?
Absolutely valid question that somebody probably would have asked in this circumstance. So the larger context, you know, in terms of what these guys are doing, they've been basically selected to go and find and save Private James Francis Ryan. So the whole thing is inspired by something that was really true, the sort of informal sole survivor policy that comes into place. Well, we don't want all the same brothers serving in the same unit. And as I understand it, what inspires the entire script in the first place, the story, is the story of the Nyland brothers. And so is it possible that you would have had a patrol sent out to get the surviving guy and get him home? I suppose theoretically, yeah. I've always thought it pretty unlikely that you'd send a patrol this far behind enemy lines and try and find him. Atmospherics, the buildings, the stone architecture destroyed, the wood lying around, the detritus, the rain. It's exactly like that in Normandy. So Neuville-au-Plain does exist. It's located about a mile north of Saint-Mère-Église, which is more famous and is one of the first towns liberated in Normandy. You would have had you know, plenty of fighting in the town, but also outside of the town, probably even more so than what you see here. What I don't like is that the soldiers portrayed among the Airborne are from the 101st Airborne Division. Actually, the soldiers who fought at Neuville-au-Plain were from the 82nd Airborne Division, including Sergeant Nyland, who was killed, you know, just outside the town. I think that's kind of a disservice to the actual unit and the actual people who fought there. That really portrays the kind of close quarters nature of combat as you might have had it in a Norman town like that, where one side could be in one building, another in the next, and they just kind of bump into each other. The translator, Upham, played by Jeremy Davies, is trying to speak to them in German, but someone who's as accomplished a linguist as he is, I think probably would have been on the sharper point of the spear of going and interrogating civilians, interrogating POWs. It would have been pretty unusual for him to move along with a patrol this far out in front at the spear point. The only thing that surprises me out of this clip is they did just open fire immediately. And I think that's more likely to happen because they may not have seen each other as well. Yeah, I really like that part of the clip because it's showing the French civilians and what's happening, how they're in the middle of this mess too, how they've lost their home, how now they're in danger.
Over here! Copy, put your head down! That's rad, dude.
There's a lot to unpack here. Certainly the sniper hunt, I mean, that is very much how a sniper would have operated. There's a number of things I've always wondered in relation to this part of the movie, though. You've got a sniper who's just fired down and wounded one of your guys. Why isn't the unit just firing at that steeple? You know, why aren't you pinning that sniper down and then maybe sending another maneuver element closer to the church? Now, There are plenty of times in World War II, of course, where a sniper has you covered and everybody's terrified and you're just kind of hunkering down. I think more likely in a church tower like that, you would probably have an artillery observer who would even be a much bigger danger to the unit because he's calling down heavy stuff. Yeah, I mean, I'll give it a 9. I just love the desperation of the moment.
We can still skip it and accomplish our mission. I mean, this isn't our mission, right, sir?
I love the precursor to this, of the discussion, the dilemma, whether to go after the radar station or not. And I think that in the American Army at the time, I think you probably would have had that conversation. You've got a lot of everyday citizens in uniform, and including Captain Miller, of course, right? And so they're wondering about the logic of doing this. What I don't understand is how he's chosen to do it. The assault, as it's portrayed, would have been a very tough go going uphill against that fairly entrenched position there. You've got an amazing sniper in your unit. Why not hang back to a covered position because you got the drop on these guys? Why not just pick them off? You throw a grenade and the other guy catches it on the other side and throws it back. That would have been a pretty neat trick. I think most any German soldier, any human being, would have just simply run from it. Here's the part of this I think is so good. The grenade explosions, which if you look at actual footage from the time, that's what a grenade explosion looked like. That's what it sounded like. Because in a lot of other movies that just aren't as well done as this, it'll be these big flames coming up and all that. And it's like, no, they're not shooting Roman candles, you know? And same thing with the German side. You'll notice the potato masher grenades they're throwing are basically concussion grenades. You know, so I think that part of the movie, I think, is really, really well done.
Cover!
That's exactly the way a lot of the fields in Normandy would have looked at the time. And as an infantryman, you absolutely would have concealed yourself that way. And in that half-track, they would not have seen you. Half-tracks were sort of, well, I mean, it gives you the mobility of like a Jeep or a truck, but you've got some level of armored protection. And you can mount sometimes some pretty formidable weapons on it, like a machine gun or an anti-tank gun or something like that. In this scene, they're using the half-track exactly the way it would have been used. The only thing I'd wonder about is that perhaps there'd be more than one half-track, and that maybe you'd have some dismounted infantry kind of scouting around. It strikes me as very vulnerable out there on its own, but that's certainly very possible. I'll just get the one thing that I don't like about it out of the way first. We have some dumb Germans here, you know, who just sort of like 9 pins come out of the half track and get just shot down and all that. Okay, yes, okay, that's Hollywood. But I love this clip. You have this kind of fog of battle in which the two American formations don't know the other is there. They're lucky that they don't have a friendly fire incident, but it's extremely well done in terms of not knowing who's where and what's going on. And then the way Miller's formation moves toward the half track, and even one of his men says to him, hold on, make sure they're down. And I really like that dynamic too. I mean, I'm going to give this one a 10 because I just really like how it portrays the exhaustion, the terrain, how infantry would have concealed there, and how you would have had this kind of chance meeting of these two different units that are enveloped in the fog of war. So this is apparently portraying a Tiger tank. Now, there's no evidence that the Americans ever faced a Tiger tank in Normandy. Behind it, though, we have a self-propelled gun of the exact type that you would have encountered, you know, in this kind of town fighting. Now, it would have taken a lot of guts to do what those American soldiers are doing there. The sticky bombs are accurate. That was supposed to be a kind of last line of defense to knock the tread off a tank. So all of that is really actually accurate, but to actually get close enough like they are to do it, I think it would have been very difficult to get that close to a tank. All this action is taking place in a fictional town called Ramelle. It doesn't really exist. But it's well described because earlier in the movie they're talking about how it's a major point over the Meurthe River, which the Americans simply have to have any bridge over that river so that they can advance westward and then get Cherbourg and get most of the rest of Normandy. So that would have been, as they put it, a solid gold objective. I love how the machine gun is portrayed, firing at that exact position where the Germans are moving through. And they're saying, we need 30 cal, and they're going through it very quickly. In the context of the battle, that's so 100% true. In this second part here, with the Molotov cocktails, you certainly would have used that to fight against a self-propelled gun like this, maybe even a tank, if you had soldiers courageous enough to do it and to get in position. I don't know about you, but if it's me, I'm either going to open fire at these guys before they can throw their Molotov cocktail at me, or I'm going to jump out of that vehicle where I know they're throwing it. Instead, they kind of just hunker down, which guarantees they're going to get burned. So I've never quite understood that reaction. This is one of the most disturbing parts of the movie, in my opinion. The close quarters battle with the tank would have been unlikely, of course, but if you could have done that, we see the tank commander apparently coming out of the hatch there, and they just shoot him, and I think that's dead on right with the kind of desperation of the moment. But I don't know that you need to throw more grenades in there, and you might need them later. So here comes that 20 millimeter flak gun. And that is so well portrayed because it's an incredibly devastating weapon designed to shoot vehicles and planes. And you're talking about using it against people. I guess I'll give it a 9 out of 10 because I don't know about the realism of actually getting that close to a tank and using that much ordnance on it. Somebody would have had to have loaded that bazooka for the sergeant. The bazooka in World War II was a very difficult weapon to work on your own because it was hard to keep the tube stable as you did that and arm the rocket, and it could slide down through the tube and explode at your feet. One of the things I like about this scene is he probably understands exactly where that self-propelled gun is going to be most vulnerable, and he gets that kill shot in there, which is totally realistic in that kind of town combat where you have probably a very limited vision for that crew. And they would never be able to see him, especially if he's sort of behind them. Hand-to-hand combat like that was, fortunately, really uncommon in World War II. Sources I found for just one battle, and this is a Pacific Theater battle where hand-to-hand combat tended to be a little more common, found that like maybe 0.7% of wounds would have been caused by puncture, like a bayonet, a knife of some kind. So, that's pretty uncommon, but in this context, it could have happened. We see Upham lurking on the stairwell, and I'll tell you, when my students evaluate this movie and write reviews of it, this is always the thing that fires them up the most. It's like, oh, that coward! Why wouldn't he have done this? But I'm so glad that the filmmakers did this. This was true for many, many other Americans or people on all sides of World War II. Actually, sometimes they just weren't up for it, And so you see this face-to-face encounter. And you see that sometimes in modern war. And what I've always thought of in watching this clip especially is the PTSD element of it. He's going to have to live with that the rest of his life, thinking about whether he could have saved Mellish. I'm going to give this one a 10. I think it's so visceral and poignant. It explores so many elements of war that other war films just hadn't up to that point in time. Sandbags are really common in World War II and thereafter. It's a pretty standard way to provide some level of protection. Now, you had to have the equipment to do it. In other words, an E-tool or entrenching tool or shovel, and then the actual sandbags themselves you'd fill up. Maybe they could have shown them filling the sandbags more earlier in the movie. But I think in a town or urban setting like this, the masonry provides you with some level of cover. You don't necessarily need sandbags. So that just simply probably means getting inside the buildings. I want to say this respectfully because I think this is one of the most brilliant movies ever made. I think that these parts are beneath a movie of this brilliance. We also see the captain, certainly groggy and out of it because of acoustic trauma, snapping off shots at a tank, apparently a Tiger tank with a pistol. Again, a little too Hollywood for me. And then we see it blow up. I remember the first time I saw this, I thought, now they're not going to say that the pistol did that. That would be absurd. So fortunately, it's a plane that does it. When you look at German accounts of the Battle of Normandy, usually one of the first things they're mentioning is how suffocating Allied air could be. The planes that are portrayed, though, are probably not the ones you would use for this purpose. I think these are P-51s, and Brian even says a little later in the clip they're tank busters. Actually, the major tank busters were P-47 Thunderbolts that tended to be better at this kind of job. So I like that they showed the aircraft having a key role in the outcome of the battle, but I think the way it's done is not all that realistic. A ground unit comes to save the day, and that's a little bit of Hollywood too, but you know what? That's not terribly unrealistic for what did happen sometimes in Normandy, where you have some embattled formations, especially airborne guys, and they're going to have amphibious landed infantry units or armored units or whatever link up with them at a pretty good time. This part only is, I'll give it a 7 out of 10 because of the things I've mentioned, of the sort of kind of cheap Hollywoodisms of shooting a pistol at the tank and all that. Overall, though, in the Ramelle battle scenes, I'm giving that a 9 out of 10. I often say I like these scenes, the town fighting scenes, better even than the famous Omaha Beach scenes, because I think they're very true to Normandy, to the Battle of Normandy, exactly the way it would have looked. My favorite Saving Private Ryan scene is actually when they're having an argument over whether to let Steamboat Willie go. It's the aftermath of when they've assaulted the radar site, and the reason it's my favorite scene is it's so true to life for the burden of command that Captain Miller has and how he's going to restore the situation and discipline. I just think it's really intelligent and informed on how the leadership of military units works and how the human dimension really manifested itself in World War II, not just World War II, but in pretty much any combat setting. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, why not click on more videos for more World War II movie breakdowns.